Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your afternoon is going well. Some news regarding the Browns that has been expected for a while, but it made official today. The Browns picked up the fifth-year option for Greg Newsome, worth a guaranteed $13.37 million for 2025. So next season, that tweet, Mary Kay Cabot. And Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, joins us. Mary Kay, not a surprise. It was to be expected, and not Greg Newsome, it's official now. They pick up the fifth-year option.
Yes, and I've been writing that they were going to do that. I think I just wrote it a couple of days ago, again, to reinforce for people that this was going to be happening, that it was not in question, that he was not getting traded over draft weekend. And it was funny because people just would not let up on that topic. They never believed Andrew that he wasn't going to trade him over draft weekend. But lo and behold, he remained, he's alive and kicking, and now he's got the fifth-year option picked up. And if all goes the way we expect it to, he will be here at least through 2025.
Yeah, are you? I have a feeling Andrew Berry's going to try to find a way to keep Martin Emerson, Denzel Ward, and Greg Newsome. Is there a way that he might be able to do that? How much work would that take on his part, do you think?
I think it can be done. It can definitely be done because there will be some of the big contracts that they have now. Over time, those guys will be off to greener pastures or out of football or whatnot. And so there will be money, and the cap keeps going up, of course. But the point here is that you really need three good starting cornerbacks nowadays. And then you need an excellent fourth and an excellent fifth. And so they just keep adding to the pile. And in today's pass-oriented and in some cases spread-oriented offenses, you really need to have a lot of good cornerbacks, and the Browns are lucky to have them.
Yeah, and the fact that they play the press man is something Jim Schwartz's style of defense needs. So I'm with you. I know you wrote an article. Take us through this. Inside look at why the Browns drafted Mike Hall Jr., Zach Zinter, and the rest of that draft class.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I just broke it down one by one and kind of explained how this all went down. So we can start with Mike Hall Jr. And basically, the Browns really only felt that they had about a 50-50 chance of landing Mike Hall Jr. Because he was one of only three defensive tackles that they really seriously considered at that number 54 spot, because they were going for the guys that had elite rush ability from the interior. The other two were Byron Murphy and then Johnny Newton. And those guys, Byron went at 18, Johnny Newton went, I think, 36. And so those guys were gone. And then between 36 and 54, they really didn't know if Mike Hall was going to be there. But then as they got closer, a number of guys that they really liked kind of started to fly off the board. And I think they felt pretty good about the fact that they were able to get Mike Hall where they did, because there was a chance, a pretty darn good chance, that he was going to be gone by 54. In fact, they took a bunch of calls to trade for that pick, and two of the teams said that they were coming up to get Mike Hall.
Yeah, Zach Zinter is a guy that, if he doesn't break his leg in that Ohio State game, I'm not sure he's there in the third round.
Probably not. He was arguably the best offensive lineman on also arguably the best offensive line in the country. So either they were one or two, Michigan. So, they were probably pretty darn lucky to get him in the third round as well. And again, it's not a super sexy pick because he's probably not going to get much playing time this year if everyone stays healthy, but certainly a good solid pick in looking ahead down the road and knowing that you have a succession plan now for Joel Bitonio. Yeah,
when you look at those first two picks, Siaka Ika is the only defensive tackle who's 29 or younger. So, you've got a lot of older defensive tackles. And then you got Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller as the guards. Those were two positions you needed the next generation of players at.
Yes, and you didn't necessarily have to get the defensive tackle this year, because you could have filled in those blanks next year, but chances are you would have maybe been looking at one of those high-priced free agents, because everybody's coveting those interior rushers now, the Chris Jones examples of the world. So, chances are they would have had to have been looking around like that to get one. Now they believe that they have that guy in the building, maybe not ready to start right away, but someone that is in the wings for next year or the year after, and he will contribute this year. I mean, he might even start, but he absolutely will contribute, and he's definitely in the mix for a starting job soon after this year.
All right, so the Browns busy today. Andrew Berry never rests. They sign a veteran center, Brian Allen. And Allen's a guy that has over 30 starts in the NFL. They note it as a good post-draft ad. It's a really good one. This is a guy that started every game in the Super Bowl season for the Los Angeles Rams. So that's really good depth to be able to add after the draft.
It really is. And, now's the time where where you need to fill in a few holes or a few spaces here and there. And, there was a center that they really liked in the draft, and if he had been available at 54, they would have taken him, the center from Oregon. And so I do think that once that didn't happen, that sort of led them to decide, we better get somebody in here who can be the succession plan basically for Ethan Posick when it's time to turn the page there. So now they're good to go at that position, and once again, very stout all the way across the line.
The other thing is the Browns' offensive line, a ton of experience. Take a look at this. Joel Bitonio, 144 starts. Conklin, 94. Teller, 75. Posick, 68. Jedrick Wills, 53 starts. Efede, 83 starts. Allen, 32 starts. And then you've got Hudson and Adenji, who, 14 and 15 starts. That's unbelievable. And then DeJuan Jones, Whippler, Dunn, and the rookie Zinter, they're loaded on the offensive line. I mean, you've got 7 guys who have started 32 games or more. That's almost 2 years of starting in the NFL from 7 different players.
Yeah, that's one thing that Andrew Berry will always do. He will build tough through the offensive and defensive lines, and that's one reason why the Browns will always be competitive, even if some other things are not going right. They're always going to be competitive in the trenches, and that's so vitally important. And it's a wonderful philosophy for the Browns, because you just know that that is a foundation for sustained success, and they just keep adding to the pile and adding to the pile. It's something that when I did a story a while back on Ryan Grigson, it's the thing that he didn't get right when he was with the Colts, and Andrew Berry was there with him when he was the GM there. He did not get that right. They didn't feel like they protected Andrew Luck adequately. It was a big regret of his. He learned from that, and Andrew subsequently always also learned from that, and now it has benefited the Browns because these quarterbacks are going to be protected.
Yeah, the other thing is if the younger guys develop, if Zach Zinter, if they feel really comfortable with him, Whippler, those things become valuable trade assets, because you've got guys that aren't starting that have 83 and 32 starts in the NFL.
Yeah, and those could turn into, assets for you, valuable trade chips and things like that. So you certainly can't go wrong by drafting and developing them. Now, over the years, it's been nice in this regime that they've had Bill Callahan to develop these guys and get them to the point where they were playing sometimes over their heads. So I'm sure that Andy Dickerson is going to come in here and just pick right up where Bill Callahan left off. We'll have to see how that goes, but I'm sure that he will carry on the tradition of great offensive line play here.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 million Ultimate Cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Just a couple things for you. I think the Browns draft was pretty solid, and I'd like to hear your opinion. But number two thing is the main one. Do the Browns have all their picks next year after this fiasco is done with the trade? Appreciate your time. Love you, brother. You and the family. Be safe. God bless you. And I'll be back to bug you later.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. So here is what the Browns have. They have their own picks, rounds 1 through 4 and 6. They have the 6th-round pick from Minnesota in the Zadarius Smith trade. They flopped picks. They also have the Vikings' 7th-round pick in the Zadarius Smith trade. And they have the Lions' 6th-round pick from the Donovan Peoples-Jones trade. So 1 through 4 they have. They don't have their 5th. They have their 6th. And they have 2 other 6ths and a 7th. Mary Kay, the draft, just your overall reaction on the Browns draft.
It was a nice, solid draft. I think if Michael Hall can come in here and be what they hope that he can be, which is their starting 3 technique, and if he can get pressure on the quarterback the way that they believe that he can, then they came away from this draft really doing a nice job for themselves. And then Zinter, he really is the succession plan for Joel Bitonio. And if they can get 10 years of really good starting guard play out of Zinter, then I think you'd be happy when you look back on this draft, even if you only had those 2 guys manning those 2 spots over the next how many ever years. But of course, then they're hoping that they get contribution from Jamari Thrash, the wide receiver, who has very, very good and distinct traits for what they're trying to do in what's going to be more of a Ken Dorsey-vibed offense. And then they got some other defensive guys that they think can help contribute, not only on defense, but on special teams. So if the top 3 guys that they got in this draft can come in and do what they think they can do, then they should be sitting pretty.
Yeah, it's not the quote-unquote sexy draft, but it made sense. Relative to where their roster is, everything they did, you can kind of see what the thought and the planning process is from the picks that they made.
Absolutely. And again, Mike Hall might just turn out to be something really special. They're so excited about his superpower of being able to rush the passer. And if you can turn him into one of these elite interior rushers that are so in vogue in the NFL right now, then you're really onto something there. And you're onto it at a point where you can save a bunch of money on it over the next 4 years as well, because those guys are going for a boatload of dollars. So it actually could turn out to be really nice. And then, I mean, if you end up with your version of Joel Bitonio, even if he doesn't make multiple All-Pros and a bunch of Pro Bowls, if you get a really, really good, solid starting guard that can replace Joel Bitonio for you, then you're going to be ahead of the game there.
So I know you've addressed this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. So now all the assets that it took to acquire Deshaun Watson, we know what they became for the Texans. And the Texans did a nice job drafting them. We'll say that. But the question would be, how do you view the Deshaun Watson trade now?
Well, the jury is still out. You cannot claim victory in the Deshaun Watson trade because the reason why you got him is to go win a Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls for you. That's what you're trying to do. Of course, that's never going to be easy in the Patrick Mahomes era. How is anybody going to get past Patrick Mahomes? Maybe it'll happen after Travis Kelce is gone. I don't know. But that's going to be really tough. But that is where the bar is set for the Cleveland Browns. That's what they intend to do. And if they achieve that, and they do that, and the Texans don't do that, then I still think that the Browns can claim victory in this blockbuster trade. So we'll have to see how this goes over the next 3 years.
All right, this from Warren Sharp, Sharp Football. Largest cap hits by year through 2025. So 2024, next year, Deshaun Watson has the largest cap hit, $63.8 million. Then it's Prescott, Wilson, Stafford, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones. And then Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. 2025, Patrick Mahomes has the largest cap hit. Deshaun Watson second, and then Josh Allen. When you look at that, the Browns gave that guaranteed contract and did that to close the deal. It just shows you they're basically going to have to be patient and try to figure out how to make Deshaun Watson what they thought he was going to be.
Yes, they definitely have to figure that out. But and there is no reason for anybody to believe right now that that's not going to happen. Everyone absolutely is confident that he's going to come back strong from his fractured shoulder surgery. So I don't think anybody in the building is wondering, geez, what are we going to do if Deshaun doesn't work out? That's not the mindset at all. They believe that he's going to be the quarterback that he was. They've surrounded him with an immense amount of talent, and they believe that he is going to accomplish all those goals that they have for him. We'll have to see how it goes. But in the event that it doesn't work out, you have to figure out a way to just move on and figure it out. And that's what a team like the Broncos had to do. That's what a team like the Steelers had to do, although they didn't have the big money involved with it necessarily. But if things don't work out with your big money quarterback, you've got to go in another direction.
So 6 of the first 12 selections in this year's draft were quarterbacks. What does that say to you, who have covered the league for a number of years? What's it tell you about where the quarterback position is?
Well, I think the college game has trickled up. I think that they have taken a lot of good dual threat college quarterbacks. They're plugging them into the NFL and letting them do the things that they did well at the college level. And the transition is you don't sit them down for 2 years anymore. You're letting them do what they do well and play to their strengths and focus on their dual threat skill sets. And it's been working. So there's more of them. And, it's going to be interesting to see how many of these guys are successful, because in the past, only 50% of first-round draft picks have been hitting. But, maybe that will change. Maybe a lot of these quarterbacks will be successful. We'll have to see. And if they are, then, that will inform going forward how teams approach the quarterback position. I mean, you don't have to have one around for 3 or 4 years. You can cycle them through, or 8 or 9 years. You can cycle them through after 3 or 4 years and just go get another one. But we'll have to see how it goes. Yeah,
you got to find the quarterback. Teams are trying everything they can to find that quarterback. It's so important. This from Pro Football Focus, NFL draft grades. Let's take a look at them around the AFC North. So Steelers, they go A+. You see interior, a tackle, then a center. You got wide receiver, linebacker, then they go back to that offensive line. Ravens, they give an A- to cornerback, and then, they get a wide receiver they're giving a shot to, an edge rusher, tackle. You look at the Bengals, they go offensive lineman, defensive lineman, wide receiver, defensive lineman, tight end. And then they give the Browns a C+. And when you look at those grades, it's all relative to the C+ is relative to where they were picking. So, but bottom line is, and we've known this for a while, teams in the division draft well and develop players well. That's why it's the toughest division in the NFL.
Yeah, and again, we'll have to see how that plays out and go grade this draft again in 2 or 3 years and see who got starters out of it, see where things went, see how Jerry Jeudy is doing, because 2 of your draft picks went for Jerry Jeudy. You have to see what Deshaun Watson did, because your first-round pick is part of the Deshaun Watson trade. Your 4th-round pick was part of the Deshaun Watson trade. So, I mean, if he's out there winning Super Bowls, then you have to factor that into this draft as well. But the other teams certainly helped themselves. I thought the Bengals really did have a nice draft, as did some of the others. And time will tell.
Yeah, grading a draft a couple days after it, you can't do it. It's your opinion versus a GM's opinion, and I'm going to go with the GM. So I'm with you. Mary Kay Cabot and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the side of the break. We're going to talk a little bit more about the receiver the Browns drafted, Jamari Thrash. Sports4CLE, be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Steve Smith Sr., a NFL Network analyst, on the best way to use Jamari Thrash, the wide receiver the Browns drafted out of Louisville. This from the Cut To It podcast.
I don't think he's a guy you play in the slot. I think you utilize him outside. The reason why you don't put him in the slot is this is why. In the slot, I don't think right now his framework, he's strong enough to fight off and to really use his hands and his body, because he really hasn't had to do it too much. Put him outside, because what he lacks in the slot, he will make up with his speed and his savviness and his route running outside. Yes, he may get held up. It may throw off the timing, but he won't completely eliminate himself, because his speed and his knowledge of how to get off routes, get off press, and get himself out of trouble will help him on the outside. Outside has space. Inside does not have space. You have to win immediately. He will win, but I think at times, because he's young, because it's a little bit more physical, he may slow down and think a little bit too much too soon. So I believe that playing him at X is where he can play, because he's a speed guy.
Mary Kay, I know you wrote an article about Thrash and what he has to do. It's really interesting. Steve Smith likes him a lot, and he's done a lot of video breakdown of him. He did some analysis and said, you know, people are criticizing the route tree. He ran the full route tree at Georgia State. Louisville didn't ask him to run the full route tree. So it was a really interesting dynamic. Take us through what you think the Browns want to see from Thrash.
Well, under Ken Dorsey, they are going to be running more of what are called choice routes. It's something that Ken got from Brian Daboll, that the Cole Beasleys ran in Buffalo when Ken was on the offensive assistant staff there, when Brian Daboll was there. It's the kind of routes that Wes Welker and Julian Edelman ran when Brian Daboll was in New England, when Chad O'Shea, Browns receivers coach, was New England. That's the kind of receiver that they're going for. And the Browns really liked Ladd McConkey, and I think that he would have been their sort of featured choice route runner in this scheme. And Jamari Thrash is sort of a poor man's version of that, not somebody that was going to go in necessarily the second round or the third round, but here he is in the fifth round. But he has the traits, he has the skill set to do it. He's got enough speed, he's got enough agility and athleticism. He's got the football acumen to do it, enough size to get the job done. So I think that is a key. And then the other thing that he's probably going to have to do is play some special teams to some degree. And I don't know exactly what role he would play on special teams, but that will help his cause.
All right. This from the Bleacher Report. NFL starters in a stronger position after the NFL draft. One of them, they say, is Nick Chubb. The Browns likely would have utilized at least one middle-round pick on a running back prospect if they didn't believe in Chubb, but declining to draft a back as well as avoiding any of the big names in a deep 2024 free agent running back class. Team has to be envisioning Chubb making a full recovery and return to his RB1 role. Andrew Berry said, you know, they'll know in the next few months, but they certainly want to give him every opportunity to be that RB1.
You know, I would actually call that a little bit of an overstatement of the situation, and I've been trying to set expectations on this. And I think the expectation is, I think people need to be a little bit more patient about what Nick Chubb is going to be able to do when he gets back out there to try to be the Nick Chubb that he used to be. This was a major knee reconstruction, the second one in the same knee. I don't think he's going to be back by the very beginning of the season. Maybe he will, because he's Nick Chubb and he could prove everyone wrong. But I think he might need a little bit more time. And I think people are just going to have to be a little bit patient with him if he's not exactly 100% and the running back that they remember before he got hurt last season. So I think I've tried to temper the enthusiasm a little bit so that people aren't expecting too much from Nick Chubb right away. And I think the report that you read there maybe sets the bar just a little bit too high for him.
Fair enough. All right, I know you wrote an article. Why do you think the Browns didn't draft a developmental quarterback, tight end, or running back?
As far as the quarterback is concerned, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who has been dealing with a hip injury, is actually doing a little bit better lately. Maybe over the past month or so, he's come around, and he should be able to contribute more. He should be able to start throwing sometime a little bit, perhaps in the offseason program or mini camp, but certainly probably by training camp, he will be participating. So I think that's a major reason why they didn't feel like they needed to get a quarterback, because there were not going to be enough reps to go around. If they have all four of these guys able to throw, then a young guy was not going to be able to get on the field. So that was the quarterback position. And then from a running back standpoint, it's not so much because they think Nick is ready to come back right away and be RB1 from the jump. It's because they feel good about everything else they have at running back right now. Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, Dante Foreman, John Kelly, Naheem Hines. They feel good about what they have and their ability to run the ball. They're getting healthy tackles back. They should be able to run the ball better even than they did last year, and they were still pretty good at it. So I think they feel okay until Nick is ready for whatever he's going to be able to contribute.
Tight end, that was the other one?
The other one was tight end. And, in the same way that we just saw them sign a center, I think they're going to sign a tight end. I do. I think they're going to look for a young tight end to add to the roster. It just didn't work out in this draft to actually draft one. But I think they'll somehow make a minor trade or find one in free agency or something. I think somehow they will add a tight end.
So this was from the 33rdteam.com. NFL rookies who landed in the perfect situations in the 2024 draft. They say Mike Hall Jr., the quick-footed, heavy-handed presence, joins a loaded defense led by Jim Schwartz. Schwartz produced an elite unit in 2023 despite lacking a real pass-rushing option at defensive tackle. Now he'll have his next star pupil. Veteran defensive coordinator has gotten the most out of tackles, and the 20-year-old has dominant stretches at Ohio State that should be able to translate to the next level. That's one of the things that I'm like, Jim Schwartz was in the draft room. If he liked Mike Schwartz, there's a pretty good indication he knows how he wants to use him.
Yes, of course. I'm sure that he had a big impact on this draft pick, as probably did their new defensive line coach, Jacques Césaire. Those guys probably had a fair amount of input in this, because you want to be drafting guys that your coaches want to coach and that your coaches want to put on the field and showcase and use. So I'm sure these guys were all about Mike Hall Jr. and Mike Vrabel might have even thrown his 2 cents. And of course, he's a little biased about those former Buckeyes, but I'm sure he probably had something to say about it as well.
Before I let you go, tight end we mentioned. Is there any area of the roster you think the Browns look to upgrade as they get ready to move in, let's say before training camp?
Maybe running back still. Maybe there is one more guy they can add to the mix there. I thought they would grab another one, and maybe they do think that by training camp Nick will be able to take some reps and start to really ramp up there a little bit. But that's probably one area that I would look at.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Mary Kay.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Great Browns coverage in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast straight ahead. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 million ultimate cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE, and we continue talking Browns draft picks. So CBS Sports NFL reporter, the national guy, Ryan Wilson, his thoughts on Mike Hall, who the Browns took in the second round, including some interesting comps.
This isn't a deep defensive line class, but you wouldn't know that to watch Michael Hall Jr., who was one of the most twitched up players in the entire draft. Think Geno Atkins and that Hall is undersized by NFL defensive line standards, and then think Geno Atkins meets Ed Oliver in terms of his get-off at the snap. And when Hall is on, good luck to any interior offensive lineman tasked with slowing him down, because he shoots gaps like a linebacker blitzing through the A-gap, and a split second later, he's either in the backfield destroying the quarterback or blowing up a run play. Now, he'll get in trouble when he doesn't keep his pad level low, and he'll struggle to get off blocks and make an impact, but that's an easy fix. And for teams looking for a penetrating interior defensive presence, Hall is your guy. He won't find his way into the first round, but he'll look like a day two steal when we look back on this draft.
With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, if you give me Geno Atkins with a guy that gets off the ball like Ed Oliver, you might have yourself an all-pro there.
Yeah, I like the word he used, twitched up. That's a good way to describe what Hall is. His initial burst off the line, I mean, he's beside these guards by the time the ball is snapped. And he was playing mostly shade. You'll probably see more work as a three-tech, kind of getting singled up. But he's a gap shooter. He's a penetrator. He gets in the backfield quickly, and he fits the scheme that Jim Schwartz runs.
And, we had talked a little bit earlier. Jim Schwartz has a pretty good idea how to use defensive tackles as a weapon with the offensive or the defensive system he plays.
Yeah, when you run that wide nine, you really got to have active defensive tackles to kind of keep everyone from keying in on the ends coming off the edge. So you see the type of guys they've went after. Even this offseason, going after someone like Quentin Jefferson is kind of the similar mold. A gap shooter, a guy who really gets north quickly and can affect the quarterback and push the pocket. So that's the style of defensive tackles they've been going after. We'll see if that leads to teams trying to key in on the run, because these guys will get out of their lanes to try to rush the quarterback.
All right, so this is interesting as well. It's from Football Insights. They tweet this out. Highest pass rush win rates, rounds 1 and 2 defensive interior linemen since the 2016 draft. Christian Barmore was tops, 15.9. That was 2021 draft. Quinnen Williams, 2019, 15.8. Michael Hall is third. 2024 draft, so this year 15.4. And again, that goes back to the 2016 draft. That shows you the win rate, and Hall is actually a higher win rate than guy taken in the first round, Byron Murphy from Texas.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing a trend there because those first two names on the list who were drafted earlier are bigger players. Barmore's like 6'5", 315. Quentin Williams is a monster of a man himself. But Byron Murphy and Hall are a little smaller. It's kind of the way the league's going. You're starting to see it pay off. And a lot of people key on the production. And Hall didn't have a ton of sacks at Ohio State. But if you watch tape, he's consistently winning his matchups. And when you're concerned with keeping someone like Myles Garrett with as little attention as possible, getting guys who win their matchups inside is the easiest way to do it. Because even if the other offensive linemen have to think about you just for a split second, that gives Myles that much more of an advantage on the outside. So getting a guy who can win his matchups cleanly and really affect it quickly. Because when you have pressure come quick from the inside, that's the worst thing a quarterback wants to see. So I think just drafting a guy in that mold is the idea here.
All right, so this from CBS Sports. Best, worst, and most interesting picks for each AFC team. So for the Browns, best pick, they go with Michael Hall. They give it an A+. Awesome value meets serious need. Young, high-level productivity and athleticism. Handwork well beyond his years. Could improve beating blocks versus the run, but he holds up well for an interior rusher. The other thing we need to point out with his size, Casey, he's 20 years old. He's going to get bigger just as he gets a little bit older.
Yeah, the weight he showed up at the combine is a little ballooned up from what he played, but I think that's the idea. Is he's got the length. He's 6'3", weighed in at 290. I think you want to see him play at that 290 and not draw back down to the 280s because he does one thing really well right now. The idea though is for him to round out his game and become a 3-down player. Luckily, the Browns can afford the time that it takes to develop that. They can play him to his strengths early and hope that he rounds out to earn that A+ grade of a draft. Right now he's going to be a rotational pass rushing defensive tackle, something the Browns actually have multiple of, so he'll have to work his way in that rotation and then increase his reps over time. But the idea is to eventually have Hall as a 3-down player.
So they go worst pick. They say Zach Zinter. They give it a C-. Powerful, but could sink his pad level more frequently in the NFL. Disallows him from setting into his anchor in pass protection, has to improve on pass plays, but brings it for the run coming off late season knee ligament tear. I don't know about you. I kind of liked the pick. He doesn't pass protect because they didn't throw the ball that much at Michigan. His pass protection will improve, and he's not going to play with Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio there. He's getting a full year to work on that anchoring and lower pad level. I like the pick a lot, actually.
I like the player. I get the idea. It was a bit of a reach from where you got him. But when you're limited with only so many picks, you got to take your guys when you can get your guys unless someone's answering that phone for you to trade back. Another reason I kind of get there with not being as high as the guard that was taken directly behind him was Dominic Pooney, someone I was a little higher on. But you get it when you watch the tape with Zinter, what he does really well. He's also a high floor player. He didn't have a single flag thrown on him last year. He's mean and he's nasty. He plays with a temperament. Think similar to Wyatt Teller in the run game. You kind of got that same mold. And like you said, in a perfect world, he doesn't see the field. You're able to groom him, bring him along, let him work on some of his deficiencies. But the idea was you got an eventual starter in the 3rd round. Now, you just got to hope that that's not until 2025. If you see it early, more of his flaws will be exposed early. But, if you can give him time to develop, he should be a competent starter in the NFL.
All right, most interesting pick, same article. They go Jamari Thrash. They graded an A. Cleveland made a big splash in wide receiver room by trading for Jerry Jeudy. Don't sleep on Thrash producing in this offense in 2024. Praised for his quickness and route running ability. Initially, when they made the pick, I wasn't crazy about it. The more I hear people who I think know what they're talking about, like Steve Smith, who we'll hear in a little bit more, makes me think this guy could end up developing into a player for him.
I actually really liked the pick. He was someone I never envisioned being there in the 5th round. I thought he was a very end of day 2, beginning of day 3. I had him ranked just behind Devontae Walker. So to get him at 156, a tremendous value. But I think we also need to temper our expectations of what to expect out of Thrash, especially as a rookie. There's a steep learning curve. But I think the idea is here, say at worst you get a wide receiver 4 out of Thrash, but he's a dynamic wide receiver 4 who can affect the vertical game, who can give you big plays and produce, these bursts of production that you don't have out of your, someone like David Bell, who occupies that same type of range, but he's a safer player. Now, there's a time and a place where you might want that player on the field, but and an offense is trying to open up and become more explosive. To get another body to throw out there that can hurt you vertically like Thrash, I think is a great idea. And someone that, ease him into it, but someone who eventually should be your wide receiver 3 or 4 down the line. This is a move to get more explosive.
Browns signed a veteran center, Brian Allen, today. And take a look at this. Allen has started 32 games in the NFL since entering the league 2018, including every game during the Rams Super Bowl run in 2021. So it's depth behind Ethan Posick. Browns now have 7 guys on that offensive line that have started 32 games. That's the equivalent to almost 2 NFL seasons of starting, all 17 games.
I kind of think back to when they signed Ethan Posick originally, and it was kind of we didn't think much of it. But he was a guy after 5 seasons that started 29 games at center coming from Seattle. This is pretty similar, right? You get a guy with a ton of experience, and keep in mind, he played under Andy Dickerson his first 3 years with the Rams before Dickerson went to Seattle. So he has familiarity there, and this speaks to 2 things to me is, no one could argue Ethan Posick hasn't been good when he's been on the field, but he has had times where it's hard for him to stay on the field. And maybe there's just a lack of faith in Whippler's ability to be ready in year 2 to be the guy if Posick goes down. This affords Whippler another year of development at center, and probably someone that I would imagine would be inactive on game day. I think this would be a excellent depth signing for the Browns, and it should make for an interesting camp.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll hear more from Steve Smith Sr. on Jamari Thrash, talk a little bit more about the Browns draft picks as well. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily as well as the Barking Browns podcast. So Steve Smith Sr., NFL Network personality, on what he sees in Jamari Thrash, the wide receiver the Browns took. This from the Cut to It podcast.
Very, very, very smart. He ran a ton of routes at Georgia State. Ran everything on a route tree. Goes to Louisville. I thought Louisville did him a disservice. When I look at the film between the two, at Georgia State, he ran every route. Every route. He gets to Louisville, he ran over, a hitch, a screen, and a stick, and a seam. But when he was at Georgia State, his route tree was vastly different. And when I talked to some people about him, I said, go look at his workload at Georgia State. That lets you know what kind of player he is. There are 2 different offenses. Yes, he's playing lesser talent, but he's going through with the lesser talent. He's going through every route on the route tree. Pro day was explosive. When I was at his pro day, they had him run a little jerk route. A jerk route is when you run here, settle your feet, and then go the opposite way. runs, settles his feet, goes the opposite way. And I believe he actually came out faster once he restarted than he did when he started. And he said he can run. Fluid, sinking his hips well, caught the ball. He was smooth, adjusted to some of the bad throws, adjusted to some of the good throws.
And Casey, Steve Smith isn't a guy that's going to say he likes your game if he doesn't like your game.
Yeah, he was real high on Cooper Kupp when no one was. I remember that. Like he'll plant a flag for a guy if he really believes in him. To his point, when Thrash was at Georgia State, he led the nation with a 17.8 yards per catch. I mean, very explosive, really nasty after the catch as well. Plays stronger than his frame would indicate, I would say. And he gives you inside-outside versatility. There's a lot to like here, And he had a mercurial season at Louisville. Now he hurts his wrist and he has several drops after that, and then people attribute that drop percentage saying he's inconsistent. Well, that problem wasn't there at Georgia State, so I think that would be the tape you'd want to look at if you want to ascertain what his ceiling could be. And there's a steep learning curve in this league, and especially being a rookie, you'll be tested and you'll have to earn his keep. But he has the skills to be a dynamic wide receiver and a deep threat, someone that can hurt you vertically, and that is something that was sorely missing in this game and from this team last year. They had a couple guys that could do it, and if you could take Cooper out of that part of the game, the Browns really didn't have something that they could pivot to. Now with Judy, with Elijah Moore being properly slotted, with Cedric Tillman coming into year 2, Thrash has an opportunity here to kind of cement a role for himself as a vertical threat.
Smith is a guy that also understands what you need to do as a undersized, if you will. We'll call it an undersized frame from a wide receiver. So that's the other reason that it's interesting to hear what he thinks of Thrash. All right. This from Field Yates, ESPN.com. Top steals in every round for the NFL draft. Top steal in round 7, Miles Harden. Harden was the 147th player on the board for me, so an 80-spot difference makes this a major value for Cleveland. Had a nose for the football in college, forcing 4 fumbles, picking off 4 passes over the past 2 seasons as a consistent disruptor. He really liked Harden, and you know what? Browns seem to understand what traits and characteristics play from the cornerback position. I think we can agree Andrew Berry seems to understand that.
Yeah, Yates wasn't alone. There were several analysts that, like Joe Marino, who was very high on Harden as well. And he was someone I didn't get to during the draft cycle. He was a little too far down the cornerback rabbit hole. And one of these years, I'm going to be able to predict the corner they're looking for. I haven't gotten there yet. They always seem to have their eye on someone. But I watched, I did my preliminaries on him now, and I watched Missouri and North Dakota State, those games. And you can see it, the physicality he plays with, real smart player. He actually, like, his recognition, I'd say, is very high. And he can play physical, and he's smart. So I think those are the things they covet. You look at the frame, 5'10", 195 pounds, you can get it. The thing for him is converting to playing on the inside, because I think that's what they're going to ask him to do. They're going to ask him to get down in the slot and and kind of push Cam Mitchell. I think that's the idea now, is to try to get bodies who can convert inside to free up the Browns if they have to move Newsome back outside if there's an injury. So I think that's going to be the key. And also, when you're a 7th-round pick, nothing's guaranteed. So he's going to have to come into camp. He's really going to have to impress. And that cornerback room's hyper-competitive. So they're going to put him in and thrust him right into the fire and make him prove himself. But I think just from the makeup of him, he does have a pretty good shot to make the roster.
All right, this from the Bleacher Report. NFL draft picks we wish we would have seen. The Browns take Kingsley Suamataia at 54. He was the 6th-ranked tackle, 37th overall prospect on the Bleacher Report board. Has traits to develop into a long-time starter at tackle. Getting him would have provided more value than adding to the defensive line that already has Tomlinson, Harris, and Quentin Jefferson. Well, that rationale makes no sense because they have 3 quality starting tackles as well. I think the thing that the Browns not taking a tackle tells me they're a lot higher on Jedrick Wills than people outside and in the national media, and even probably some Browns fans are.
Yeah, I think the move, if you think tackle, the move's for 2025. It's not for 2024. With the Jed Wills thing is curious, right? Because like, say he does have an exceptional year this year, do they give him a bag? Do they really like give him a big contract just because of his full body of work? I don't think that you could really go all in on that. So it's going to come down to, if he plays really well, what do you offer him? Is he willing to play for less than top tier money? Because his body of work hasn't been top tier, even if he has an outstanding season. So they might get caught in kind of no man's land. So, but you have a first round pick next year. So I think they're in the mindset of, if they have to replace him, I think that's probably where they'll try to do it. As far as this year, I don't know how they're going to handle the right tackle situation. I think the best case scenario is, you have a really good swing tackle. So if something does happen, you can put him over there for this year. And you got to keep in mind, they also they invested, get a guy like Hakeem Adeniji and Jermaine Ifedi. Jermaine Ifedi's had over 60 starts at right tackle. So they have experience back there if something goes wrong this year. So I think all their eggs are in for next year's basket if they have to go tackle.
Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We will continue talking Browns and Browns draft. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 million Ultimate Cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast. This from The Athletic. Beat writers' favorite picks for each team in the 2024 NFL Draft. For the Browns, they go Zach Zinter from Michigan. Massive, athletic, battle-tested after 4 years starting at Michigan. Browns wanted a tough, nasty, and interesting prospect to add to their soon-to-be evolving offensive line group, and they got that in Zinter. I think I'm a little higher on him than you are. What are your level? I don't think he'd have been there in the third round if he doesn't break his leg. He couldn't test. He couldn't do a lot of the things. The fact that he played on that line in Harbaugh's offensive system, he was coached like a pro for 4 years under Harbaugh. Those are some of the things I like. And then you can see him being nasty. What are some of the things you're concerned about Zinter with that kind of knocked him down a little bit in your mind?
I don't see him as a high ceiling player. I see him as a very high floor player. And those attributes you're talking about, the tough, the nasty, the toughness, the way he approaches the game, those are the appealing parts of his game, and that's what aids him in the run game, man, and that's why he's a mauler. And like you just said earlier, he wasn't asked to do it. They weren't a pass heavy team, so he doesn't have that kind of that workload in the pass protection. So that's something he's going to have to show. He might possess those things and just wasn't asked to show them. Based on what I've seen, I find him to be a high floor player. And I'm also just based on where you took him. And you might be right. If he doesn't break his leg, maybe that's a second round player. We would have had to see how that played out. But just given his injury, I like the idea that you're drafting for 2025. Mm-hmm. You're not drafting him for now. He doesn't have to be anything right now other than a piece of clay to be molded. But the idea is to get a starter. So that mission accomplished. I was higher on Dominic Pooney because he could do more. He could play from tackle to center. So that's kind of what I'm grading him up against, because I view Zinter as a guard only. But if this is a move for 2025, there's nothing wrong with that. You're going to have to stash him for a year, and I don't know if this means Michael Dunn's going to be in danger from a roster spot. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But the player's fine. I was just a little miffed on where they took him. But like you said, if that leg doesn't get broke, maybe he's not even there.
Yeah, by and large, if you're taking, you know, an elite guard in my mind, you know, there might be one or two that go in the first 2 rounds. Then you start getting into that 3rd round, and those are the, you know, the maulers. You know, he is a mauler. Think Wyatt Teller. You know, that's kind of what you got. This is from the Bleacher Report. Hot takes, predictions for Browns rookies after the 2024 draft. So they go, Jamari Thrash has the best chance to make a significant impact in 2024. Michael Hall takes time to thrive on the interior, and Zach Zinter's impact won't be felt until 2025. Yeah. I wouldn't argue that. That's not a hot take. I think that's kind of the plan. Thrash and Hall, I think Hall has a chance to potentially become the starter pretty early next season.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because of what he does really well is rush the passer, which you got Mo Hurst and Quentin Jefferson already kind of doing that. Is he going to be able to supplant them? You know, they're veterans. They're used to the wear and tear of the league. Obviously, Hurst has the injury concerns. So it's going to be tough for him to make an impact in that role early, but it's, you know, he's talented. There's no doubt in that, and they're really high on him. So they're going to give him every opportunity to prove he's worth that 54 pick. Luckily for everyone involved, he doesn't have to be thrust into it. He's going to get a chance to earn it. I would actually say the guy I think makes the biggest impact as a rookie wasn't even on that list. I think Nathaniel Watson as a special teams player could be lights out. Like he's all gas, no brakes. You know, he's going to be extremely fun in special teams. You know, 6'2", 233, really physical player, and just flies around. Thrash, it's tough. You know, I think he'll make a couple of splash plays, but being a rookie wide receiver, it's just such a steep learning curve. So it's hard for me to expect. But if he gives you 2 or 3 explosive touchdowns, I think he'll probably have the most impact in our minds, even if it's not on the field.
Well, the other thing that we heard Andrew Berry say relative to Watson, Nathaniel Watson, that is, that they see a lot of Sione Takitaki in him, that, you know, he's a guy that could play, you know, off the ball, he could play the mic. And then he also said he's a guy that could eventually wear the helmet and do the defensive calls, which tells you they think a lot about his football acumen and his IQ.
Yeah, we were actually talking about DeCameron Richardson, the corner from Mississippi State, thinking, man, they got themselves a pipeline after they got Emerson, kind of looking to that school for defensive help. Well, that's where they snagged this young man from. So they definitely went over the tape and seen how he plays. Very aggressive downhill player, 10 sacks as an off-ball linebacker. That's crazy production, you know, and to think that, I think that that's a pretty accurate description of, you know, 6'2", 233 could definitely handle the Sam stuff. But if they see him as an eventual Mike linebacker, that means they believe the ceiling is very high on that young man.
All right, so Browns made it official. They did, in fact, pick up Greg Newsome's 5th-year option. We've talked about this. I still think they're going to try to find a way to keep Newsome, Ward, and Emerson past next year. Tell me why you think I might be wrong in that thought.
Well, it depends. I don't think he plays on that $15 million. I know that's what the number says now, but I think they try to work out a deal between now and then. But also keep in mind, Drew Rosenhaus is his agent, and they're not going to let Greg Newsome sign a slot corner deal. They're going to try to get him for that outside corner money. But if you just look at how it's situated, I think you're right. For the next 2 seasons, unless they get a deal they can't refuse, that's going to be who they keep. But Ward is out of guaranteed money after 2025. I think there's a world in which they move on from Ward at that time. You know, he's had a crazy good career. You get to that stage, though, and you start looking towards the future, and that'll be the year that both Emerson and Newsome's new deal would kick in. So I think the timing kind of lines up that they could move Newsome back to outside to pair with Emerson after the 2025 season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. You know, the other question is, you know, at that point in time, Newsome's not a big guy. Does his body take 2 more years of NFL beating and leave him at an elite level? That's, you know, nobody knows the answer to that, but that's the question that they have to figure out. All right, before I let you go, this from Dog Pound Daily, 3 Browns futures who are in doubt after the NFL draft. Number 3, they go Siaka Ika, last year's 3rd-round pick. Number 2, David Bell, a 3rd-round pick as well. Number 1, Joel Bitonio or Wyatt Teller. And if you're talking about this year, there's no way Joel Bitonio or Wyatt Teller are going anywhere. And I think Ika and Bell, they want to see more of.
Yeah, Ika, I think there was a picture that resurfaced today. He slimmed down a little bit. I think he might have got a memo that they need him to be more impactful. And you see the direction they're going with the size of the guys they're drafting, to get him slimmed down and see what he can do. But I don't think Barry has yet to walk away from a guy after 1 year. So I think he has this year to prove himself. If we're in the same situation next year and he hasn't been able to get on the field or provide any production in any way, I think that'll be the time they move on from him. This is for Bell, though. This is a warning shot. You drafted a player who's going to be vying for your spot, who is more athletic and provides more of a threat in the vertical game. The one knock on him is Thrash is he had a high drop percentage, but we covered it earlier. Those drops really didn't start to affect him until after he hurt his wrist really badly last year and played with a hurt hand. So I think that's going to be a competition to watch for. I think Bell's the safer player, but the player with more variance but a way higher ceiling is Jamari Thrash. And if he could push out Bell and take his reps over the course of this preseason.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. He writes for Dog Pound Daily. He is also co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. Always really good Brown stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.